Hey there! Welcome back to English in Fluency. I'm Alex, and I am so glad you're here with me today. This episode is a big one, so get comfortable, grab a coffee if you want one, and let's get started. Today we're doing something a little different. Instead of me just talking to you the whole time, you're going to hear real conversations. Dialogues between two native English speakers, talking the way people actually talk in everyday life. This is a B1 listening practice episode, which means the language is a little more natural, a little faster, and a little more relaxed than what you might hear in a beginner lesson. But don't worry, I'm going to slow things down for you, explain the tricky parts, and give you a chance to repeat key phrases out loud so they really stick. If you're new to the show, B1 is what's often called an intermediate level. It means you can already handle basic conversations, you know your core grammar, and you're comfortable with everyday vocabulary, but real, natural speech still throws you off sometimes, especially when native speakers talk quickly, use idioms, or connect their words together in ways that don't match what you see written down. That's exactly the gap we're closing today. Every single dialogue you're about to hear was written the way people genuinely talk to each other, not the way a textbook would write it. That means you'll hear contractions, filler words, casual grammar, and natural pacing. All the things that make real English sound real. Listening to two native speakers talk to each other is one of the best ways to improve your English. Because in real life, you're not always going to be talking to a textbook. You're going to be listening to two friends chatting at a coffee shop, two co-workers talking about a project, or two neighbors talking over the fence. So, that's exactly what we're doing today. We've got 30 different dialogues today, covering everyday situations, ordering coffee, asking for directions, making weekend plans, talking about the weather, chatting at work, going to the doctor, shopping for clothes, catching up with an old friend, dealing with a delayed flight, talking about a new apartment, discussing a movie, a casual phone call between two friends, ordering at a restaurant, talking about a new puppy, dealing with car trouble, planning a weekend getaway, fixing a computer problem, planning a surprise party, calling a landlord about a broken heater, talking about a job interview, splitting chores with a roommate, signing up at a gym, dealing with a lost package, starting a new hobby, talking about moving to a new city, signing up for a library card, fixing a cracked phone screen, volunteering with a coworker, dealing with a noisy neighbor, and finally, choosing a new restaurant for dinner. After each dialogue, I'm going to break down the important vocabulary, the natural expressions, and the little details that make native speech sound, well, native. And whenever I give you an example phrase, I want you to say it out loud with me. Repeat. Alex. Let's get started. Let's jump into our first dialogue. Two friends meeting up at a coffee shop. Here's our first conversation. Sarah and Mike are meeting at a coffee shop on a Saturday morning. Sarah says, "Hey Mike, over here. Sorry, I'm a little late. Traffic was crazy this morning." Mike says, "No worries at all. I just got here myself, like 2 minutes ago." Sarah says, "Oh, good. I hate making people wait. So, what are you getting?" "I think I'm going to go with a caramel latte." Mike says, "That actually sounds really good. I was thinking about just getting a regular coffee." but now I might copy you. Sarah says, "Ha, go for it. There's no shame in copying a good order." "Hey, did you end up going to that concert last weekend?" Mike says, "Yeah, we went. It was awesome. The opening band was actually better than I expected." Sarah says, "No way." "Really? I heard the opening act was kind of weak this tour." Mike says, "I guess it depends on the night. Ours was surprisingly good." "You should have come." Sarah says, "I wanted to, but I had my cousin's wedding. Remember?" Mike says, "Oh, right. Right. How was that? By the way?" Sarah says, "It was beautiful. Honestly, a little long, but beautiful. My feet were killing me by the end of the night from those heels." Mike says, "Yeah, weddings are always longer than you expect. Okay, should we order? I don't want to hold up the line." Sarah says, "Yeah, let's go. I'm starving too. I might grab a muffin or something." "All right, let's break that one down. First, notice how Sarah says, 'Sorry, I'm a little late.' That's a super common way to apologize casually. You don't need anything fancy. Just 'sorry, I'm a little late' works perfectly in real life. Repeat, 'Sorry, I'm a little late.' Next, Mike says, 'No worries at all.' That's one of the most common responses to an apology in casual American English. It basically means it's totally fine. Don't worry about it. Repeat, 'No worries at all.' Now, here's something interesting. Did you notice Mike said, 'I just got here myself,' like 2 minutes ago? That word 'like' isn't being used to mean similar to. It's what we call a filler word. Native speakers use it constantly in casual speech. It doesn't really add meaning. It's just a natural pause or softener. You'll hear this a lot. So don't let it confuse you. Also, notice the phrase, 'go for it.' Sarah says, 'Ha, go for it.' There's no shame in copying a good order. Go for it means, do it. I encourage you. There's nothing stopping you. Repeat, go for it. Another great phrase here is, 'no way.' Really, this is how native speakers express surprise in a casual, friendly way. Repeat, 'no way.' Really? And finally, notice the ending. Sarah says, 'My feet were killing me.' This is an idiom, and it does not mean anything violent. It simply means, my feet hurt a lot. Repeat, 'My feet were killing me.' Great job so far. Let's move on to our second dialogue. This time, we've got someone asking a stranger for directions downtown. Our second dialogue is between Tom, who is a visitor in a new city, and Lisa, a local resident who he stops on the street. Tom says, "Excuse me, sorry to bother you, but do you know how to get to the train station from here?" Lisa says, "Oh, sure. No problem. You're actually not too far. You just go straight down this street for about 2 blocks. Tom says, "Okay, straight for 2 blocks. Lisa says, "Yeah. And then you'll see a big intersection with a pharmacy on the corner. Take a left there." Tom says, "Left at the pharmacy. Got it?" Lisa says, "After that, you'll walk maybe 5 more minutes, and the station is going to be right on your right. You can't miss it." Tom says, "That's really helpful. Thank you so much. Would it be faster to just grab a cab?" Lisa says, "Honestly, at this time of day, walking might actually be quicker. Traffic gets pretty bad around here in the afternoon." Tom says, "Good to know. I'll just walk then. Thanks again. I really appreciate it." Lisa says, "No problem at all. Have a safe trip." Let's look at some useful language here. Tom starts with, "Excuse me. Sorry to bother you. This is a very polite way to interrupt a stranger and ask for help. Repeat. Excuse me. Sorry to bother you. Lisa responds with, "Oh, sure. No problem." This shows she's happy to help. And it sounds warm and friendly. Repeat. "Oh, sure. No problem." Notice how Lisa gives directions using very natural phrasing. You just go straight down this street. Take a left there. The station is gonna be right on your right. You can't miss it. That last phrase, "you can't miss it," is extremely common when giving directions. It means it's obvious. You will definitely see it. Repeat. You can't miss it. Also, pay attention to how gonna is used here instead of going to in fast, casual speech. Native speakers almost always shorten going to into gonna. This is completely normal in spoken English. Even though you wouldn't write it that way in a formal email. Finally, Tom asks, would it be faster to just grab a cab? To grab a cab is a casual way of saying to take a taxi. Repeat. Grab a cab. Excellent work. Now, let's head into dialogue number 3. This one is about making weekend plans between two co-workers. Dialogue 3. Jenny and Dave are co-workers, talking on a Friday afternoon before leaving the office. Jenny says, "Hey, any big plans for the weekend?" Dave says, "Not really. Honestly, I think I'm just gonna relax. Maybe clean the apartment a bit." "What about you?" Jenny says, "Oh, I've got a pretty packed weekend, actually. My sister's coming into town tonight." Dave says, "Oh, nice. How long is she staying?" Jenny says, "Just until Sunday. We're gonna do a little shopping tomorrow. And then Saturday night, we've got dinner reservations at that new Italian place downtown." Dave says, "The one that just opened by the river?" Jenny says, "Yeah, that one. Have you heard anything about it?" Dave says, "I've heard really good things. Actually, my buddy went last week and said the pasta was incredible." Jenny says, "Okay, good. Now I'm even more excited. What about Sunday? You doing anything then?" Dave says, "Probably just watching the game and doing absolutely nothing." Which honestly sounds amazing right now. Jenny says, "Huh, that does sound nice. Okay, well, have a good weekend if I don't see you before you head out." Dave says, "You too. Tell your sister I said hi." Let's dig into the vocabulary here. Jenny asks, "Any big plans for the weekend?" This is a very natural, shortened way of asking, "Do you have any big plans?" Native speakers often drop words like, "Do you have?" when the meaning is still clear from context. Repeat. "Any big plans for the weekend?" Dave responds with, "Not really. Honestly." This is a soft, casual way to say no. I don't have plans. Repeat. "Not really. Honestly." Notice the phrase, "a pretty packed weekend." Packed here means full or busy. Repeat. A pretty packed weekend. Also, notice buddy. This is casual American slang for friend, especially among men. Repeat. My buddy. And finally, Dave says he wants to do absolutely nothing, which honestly sounds amazing right now. This shows how native speakers use exaggeration and emphasis, absolutely nothing, to sound more expressive and relaxed. Repeat. Absolutely nothing. Nice work. Let's keep going. Dialogue 4 is about the weather, a classic small talk topic. Dialogue 4. Karen and Bill are neighbors, chatting outside their apartment building. Karen says, "Can you believe this weather? It's been raining nonstop for like a week." Bill says, "I know. It's insane. I don't think I've seen the sun in days." Karen says, "Right? And the forecast says it's supposed to keep going through the weekend, too. Bill says, "Great. Just great. So much for my plans to go hiking on Saturday." Karen says, "Ah, that's a bummer. Maybe it'll clear up last minute." "You never know." Bill says, "I hope so. At this point, I'd settle for like one sunny afternoon." Karen says, "Same here. Honestly, my dog has been going crazy being stuck inside all the time." Bill says, "Ah, I bet. Dogs need their walks. They get restless." Karen says, "Exactly. All right. Well, stay dry out there." Bill says, "You too. See you around. Let's break this down." Karen says, "Can you believe this weather?" This is a very common expression used to express frustration or surprise, usually about something negative. Repeat. "Can you believe this weather?" Bill responds, "I know. It's insane." Insane here doesn't mean crazy in a clinical sense. It just means extreme or unbelievable. Repeat. It's insane. You'll hear this word used constantly in casual American English to add emphasis to almost anything surprising, whether it's good news, bad weather, or a crazy story a friend is telling you. Notice the phrase "so much for my plans"? This is a great idiom that means my plans are ruined or canceled. Repeat. "So much for my plans." Karen responds with, "That's a bummer." A bummer means a disappointing situation. Repeat. "That's a bummer." And Bill says, "I'd settle for like one sunny afternoon." To settle for something means to accept less than what you originally wanted. Repeat. "I'd settle for..." Great job. You're picking up some really natural expressions. Let's move to Dialogue 5. A conversation at work between two colleagues discussing a project. Dialogue 5. Rachel and James are working together on a project deadline. Rachel says, "Hey, James, how's the report coming along?" James says, "Honestly, it's coming along slower than I hoped. I ran into a few issues with the data yesterday." Rachel says, "Oh no. What happened?" James says, "Some of the numbers from the other department didn't match what we had, so I had to double-check everything." Rachel says, "That's frustrating. Do you think you'll still make the deadline?" James says, "I think so, but it's gonna be close. I might need to stay a little late tonight to finish up." Rachel says, "Let me know if you need help. I can take a look at the data with you if that would speed things up." James says, "Actually, that would be a huge help. Thank you." Rachel says, "No problem. We're a team, right? Let's knock it out together." James says, "Appreciate it. Seriously. Okay, let me pull up the file. Let's look at the language here." Rachel asks, "How's the report coming along?" This phrase, "coming along," is used to ask about progress on something. Repeat. "How's it coming along?" James responds, "I ran into a few issues." To run into an issue means to unexpectedly encounter a problem. Repeat. "I ran into a few issues." Notice the phrase, "it's going to be close." This means the outcome is uncertain. It might just barely work out. Repeat. "It's going to be close." Rachel offers help by saying, "That would speed things up." To speed something up means to make it happen faster. Repeat. Speed things up. And finally, Rachel says, "Let's knock it out together." To knock something out is a casual way of saying to finish a task, often efficiently. Repeat. "Let's knock it out." This is a really motivating, team-oriented phrase you'll hear often at work, especially when someone wants to encourage a coworker to power through a task together rather than facing it alone. Awesome! You're really building up a great collection of natural phrases. Let's continue to Dialogue 6. This one takes place at a doctor's office. Dialogue 6. This is a conversation between a patient, Nancy, and her doctor. Dr. Evans. Dr. Evans says, "Good morning." Nancy, "Come on in. Have a seat." "So what brings you in today?" Nancy says, "Hi, doctor. I've just been having this nagging pain in my lower back for about a week now." Dr. Evans says, "Okay, and would you say it's a sharp pain or more of a dull ache?" Nancy says, "It's more of a dull ache, but it gets worse when I sit for too long." Dr. Evans says, "Got it. Have you done any heavy lifting recently? Or anything that might have strained it?" Nancy says, "Actually, yeah. I moved some furniture around last weekend. Now that you mention it," Dr. Evans says, "that would definitely explain it. I'd recommend taking it easy for the next few days. Maybe some ice for the swelling, and over-the-counter pain relief if needed." Nancy says, "Should I be worried? Or is this pretty normal?" Dr. Evans says, "It sounds pretty typical for a minor strain. Nothing alarming, but if it doesn't improve in a week or two, definitely come back in and we'll take a closer look." Nancy says, "Okay, that's a relief to hear. Thank you so much, Doctor." Dr. Evans says, "Of course. Take care of yourself. And don't lift anything too heavy for a while." Let's break down this dialogue. Dr. Evans asks, "What brings you in today?" This is the standard, polite way a doctor asks why you're visiting. Repeat. "What brings you in today?" Nancy describes a nagging pain. Nagging here means persistent and annoying, not going away. Repeat. "A nagging pain." The doctor asks if it's a dull ache. A dull ache is a mild, ongoing pain, as opposed to sharp pain, which is sudden and intense. Repeat. "A dull ache." Notice the phrase strained it. To strain a muscle means to injure it through overuse or awkward movement. Repeat. "I strained it." And finally, the doctor says, "Take it easy." This common phrase means to rest and avoid overexerting yourself. Repeat. "Take it easy." Fantastic. Let's move on to Dialogue 7, a conversation about shopping for clothes. Dialogue 7. Emma is shopping and asking a store employee, Chris, for help. Emma says, "Hi, excuse me, do you have this shirt in a smaller size?" Chris says, "Let me check for you. What size are you currently holding?" Emma says, "This one's a medium. I think I need a small." Chris says, "Okay, give me just a second. I'll go check in the back." Emma says, "Sure, take your time." Chris says, "All right, good news? We've got one small left. Here you go." Emma says, "Perfect. Thank you so much. Oh, and do you know if this is on sale? I saw a sign near the entrance." Chris says, "Let me scan it real quick. Yep. Looks like it's 20% off today only." Emma says, "Oh, awesome. That's great timing. I'll take it then." Chris says, "Great choice. By the way, that color looks really nice." Emma says, "Thank you. I appreciate that. Where are the fitting rooms?" "By the way," Chris says, "right this way. I'll show you." Let's go over the vocabulary. Emma asks, "Do you have this shirt in a smaller size?" This is the standard, polite phrase for asking about sizing in a store. Repeat. "Do you have this in a smaller size?" Chris says. "Let me check for you." This shows helpful, service-oriented language. Repeat. "Let me check for you." Notice the phrase, "take your time." This means There's no rush. You can be as slow as you need to be. Repeat. Take your time. Emma asks if something is on sale. On sale means the price is temporarily reduced. Repeat. It's on sale. And Chris says, "That's great timing." This phrase is used when something happens at a convenient or lucky moment. Repeat. Great timing. Wonderful. You're doing great. Let's continue to Dialogue 8, catching up with an old friend. Dialogue 8. Peter runs into his old college friend, Amanda, at a grocery store. Peter says, "Wait, Amanda? Oh my gosh. Is that you?" Amanda says, "Peter. Oh my gosh. I haven't seen you in forever. How have you been?" Peter says, "I've been good. Really good, actually. I can't believe it's been, what, like 5 years?" Amanda says. "At least. Yeah. So, what have you been up to? Last I heard you were still in Chicago." Peter says, "Yeah. I moved back here, actually. About a year ago now. Started a new job. It's been keeping me busy." Amanda says, "That's awesome. Congrats. Are you liking it so far?" Peter says, "Yeah. Honestly, it's a great fit. What about you? Still doing the whole marketing thing?" Amanda says, "Yep. Still at it. Actually just got promoted a few months ago." Peter says, "No way. That's huge. Congratulations. We should definitely catch up properly sometime. Grab a coffee or something." Amanda says, "I'd love that. Here, let me give you my number. We'll figure out a time. Let's break down this natural conversation." Peter says, "Is that you?" This is a common reaction to unexpectedly recognizing someone. Repeat. "Is that you?" Amanda says. "I haven't seen you in forever." Forever. Here is an exaggeration, meaning a very long time. Repeat. "I haven't seen you in forever." Peter says, "What have you been up to?" This is a very common casual question, asking what someone has been doing with their life recently. Repeat. "What have you been up to?" Notice the phrase, "It's been keeping me busy." This means something is taking up a lot of your time. Repeat. "It's been keeping me busy." And Amanda says, "Still at it." This phrase means still doing the same activity. Still continuing. Repeat. Still at it. Great job. Let's move to Dialogue 9. Dealing with a delayed flight at the airport. Dialogue 9. Two strangers. Mark and Sophie are sitting near each other at the airport after their flight gets delayed. Mark says, "Great. Another delay. This is the second time they've pushed it back." Sophie says, "Ugh, tell me about it. I've been sitting here for almost 3 hours now." Mark says, "Where are you headed? If you don't mind me asking?" Sophie says, "Denver, for a work conference." "You?" Mark says, "Same. Actually, I'm headed there for a wedding this weekend." Sophie says, "Oh no. Are you going to make it in time?" Mark says, "I think so. It's cutting it close. But the wedding isn't until tomorrow evening." Sophie says, "Okay, that's good. At least you've got a little buffer. I've got a meeting first thing tomorrow morning. So I'm a little stressed." Mark says, "Yeah, that would stress me out too. Hopefully they get us moving soon. They just said 30 more minutes." Sophie says, "They've said that twice already, so I'm not holding my breath." Mark says, "Huh, fair enough. Well, at least we've got good company waiting it out." Let's look at the language here. Mark says, this is the second time they've pushed it back. To push something back means to delay or postpone it. Repeat. They pushed it back. Sophie responds, "Tell me about it." This phrase is used to agree strongly with someone. especially about something frustrating. Repeat. Tell me about it. Notice the phrase "it's cutting it close." This means there's very little time left. The timing is risky. Repeat. It's cutting it close. Sophie mentions a buffer. A buffer here means extra time built in just in case something goes wrong. Repeat. A little buffer. And finally, Sophie says, "I'm not holding my breath." This idiom means she doesn't really expect something to happen. She's skeptical. Repeat. I'm not holding my breath. This expression is especially common when someone has been let down before. And it's a great way to show mild skepticism without sounding overly negative or rude. Excellent. We're almost there. Let's move to Dialogue 10. A conversation about a new apartment. Dialogue 10. Julia is telling her friend Ben about her new apartment. Julia says, "So I finally signed the lease on that apartment I told you about." Ben says, "No way." "Congrats. Is it the one downtown? With the big windows?" Julia says, "Yep, that's the one." I'm still kind of in shock. Honestly, it happened so fast. Ben says, "That's great though, right? When do you move in?" Julia says, "First of next month. So I've got a few weeks to pack everything up." Ben says, "Need any help moving? I've got a truck, so I could help haul some stuff." Julia says, "Oh my gosh, really? That would be amazing. Honestly, moving is my least favorite thing in the world." Ben says, Nobody likes moving. But with a truck, it goes way faster. Just let me know the date." Julia says, "Will do. Thank you so much. I owe you one." Ben says, "Don't worry about it. That's what friends are for." "Let's break this dialogue down," Julia says. "I signed the lease. A lease is a rental agreement, and to sign the lease means the apartment is officially yours." Repeat. "I signed the lease." Ben says, "I'm still kind of in shock." In shock means surprised, sometimes overwhelmed by good or bad news. Repeat. "I'm in shock." Notice the phrase "haul some stuff." To haul means to carry or transport, often something heavy. Repeat. Haul some stuff. Julia says, "I owe you one." This phrase means she'll return the favor later. She's grateful and indebted. Repeat. "I owe you one." And Ben responds, "That's what friends are for." A warm, classic phrase used when helping someone close to you. Repeat. "That's what friends are for." Great work. Let's move on to Dialogue 11, a conversation about a movie. Dialogue 11. Dan and Michelle just left the movie theater after watching a film together. Dan says, "Okay, so what did you think?" Michelle says, "Honestly, I really liked it. Way more than I expected." Dan says, "Same. Actually, the ending kind of threw me off, though. I didn't see that coming at all." Michelle says, "Right? I was not expecting that twist. My jaw literally dropped." Dan says, Same here. The acting was really solid too, especially the lead actor." Michelle says, "Agreed. He really carried the whole movie. I think this might be his best role yet." Dan says, "Probably. Yeah. Would you watch it again?" Michelle says, "Definitely. I feel like there were things I missed the first time around." Dan says, "Same. We should watch it again once it's out to stream." Michelle says, "For sure. Let's do that." "Okay. Should we grab something to eat? I'm starving." "Let's look at the vocabulary here," Dan asks. "What did you think?" This is the standard, casual way to ask for someone's opinion. Repeat. "What did you think?" Michelle says, "The ending kind of threw me off." To throw someone off means to surprise or confuse them unexpectedly. Repeat. It threw me off. Notice the phrase, my jaw literally dropped. This is a dramatic, common expression to describe extreme surprise. Repeat. My jaw dropped. Michelle also says, he really carried the whole movie. To carry a movie means an actor's performance is the main reason the film works well. Repeat. He carried the movie. This expression works for more than just actors, too. You can say someone carried a project at work, or even carried a whole team during a difficult stretch. And finally, Dan says, once it's out to stream, this means once the movie becomes available on a streaming platform. Repeat. Out to stream. Fantastic. We've got one more dialogue left. Dialogue 12. A casual phone call between two friends. Dialogue 12. Chloe calls her friend Ryan just to catch up. Chloe says, hey, you got a minute? Ryan says, yeah, of course. What's up? Chloe says, nothing much. Honestly, just wanted to check in. Feels like we haven't talked in forever. Ryan says, I know. Things have just been so busy lately. Work has been kicking my butt. Chloe says, oh no, what's going on? Ryan says, just a lot of overtime. We're short-staffed right now, so I've been picking up extra shifts. Chloe says, that sounds exhausting. Are you at least getting some time to relax? Ryan says, barely. Honestly, but it should calm down in a couple weeks. They're supposed to be hiring more people soon. Chloe says, good. You deserve a break. Okay, well, I won't keep you. Just wanted to say hi and see how you're doing. Ryan says, I really appreciate that. Seriously. Let's grab dinner soon once things settle down. Chloe says, I'd love that. Just let me know when you're free. Ryan says, will do. Thanks for calling. It really made my day. Let's break down the last dialogue. Chloe asks, you got a minute? This is a very casual way of asking if someone has time to talk. Repeat. You got a minute? Ryan says, work has been kicking my butt. This is an informal idiom meaning work has been extremely difficult or exhausting. Repeat. It's kicking my butt. Notice the phrase short-staffed. This means there aren't enough workers. The team is understaffed. Repeat. We're short-staffed. Chloe says, I won't keep you. This polite phrase means she doesn't want to take up too much of the other person's time. Repeat. I won't keep you. And finally, Ryan says, it really made my day. This warm phrase means something brought him a lot of happiness. Repeat. It made my day. This is a warm, genuine way to thank someone for a small but meaningful gesture. And native speakers use it often to express real appreciation without sounding overly formal. We're not done yet, though. I've got 6 more dialogues for you. So let's keep the momentum going. Dialogue 13 is a conversation at a restaurant between a waiter and a customer. Dialogue 13. A waiter named Tony is taking an order from a customer named Diane. Tony says, hi there. Welcome in. Can I start you off with something to drink? Diane says, yes, please. Could I just get a water with lemon? And maybe a glass of the house white wine? Tony says, sure thing. Coming right up. Have you had a chance to look at the menu? Or do you need a few more minutes? Diane says, actually, I think I'm ready. Could I get the grilled salmon with the side salad instead of fries? Tony says, absolutely. That's a great choice. How would you like the salmon cooked? Medium or well done? Diane says, medium is perfect. Thank you. Tony says, "You got it. Anything else I can grab for you in the meantime?" "Bread. Appetizers?" Diane says, "Actually, could we get an order of the calamari to start? My husband should be here any minute. So we'll share that while we wait." Tony says, "Perfect. I'll put that in right away, and I'll bring your drinks out shortly." Diane says, "Thank you so much. Let's break down this dialogue." Tony says, "Can I start you off with something to drink?" This is the standard, polite way. Servers open an order in a restaurant. Repeat. "Can I start you off with something to drink?" Diane responds, "Could I get," which is a very common, polite way to order. Repeat. "Could I get?" Notice the phrase coming right up. This means the request will be handled very soon, almost immediately. Repeat. Coming right up. Tony asks, "Do you need a few more minutes?" This is a natural, considerate way to check if a customer needs more time. Repeat. A few more minutes? And finally, Diane says her husband should be here any minute. This phrase means he's expected to arrive very soon. Repeat. Any minute. Great job. Let's move on to Dialogue 14, a conversation about pets between two neighbors. Dialogue 14. Susan and Greg are chatting about a new puppy. Susan says, "Oh my gosh, is that a new puppy? He is adorable." Greg says, "Thank you. Yeah, we just got him last week. His name is Buddy." Susan says, "Ah, Buddy. Hi, Buddy. How old is he?" Greg says, "He just turned 3 months, so he's still got a lot of growing to do." Susan says, "Huh, enjoy this stage while it lasts. They grow up so fast. Is he a lot of work?" Greg says, "Honestly, yeah, way more than I expected. The potty training alone has been a challenge." Susan says, "Oh, I remember that with my dog. It's rough for a few weeks, but it gets so much easier." Greg says, "That's reassuring to hear. Any tips that worked for you?" Susan says, "Consistency is really key. Taking him out at the same times every day made a huge difference for us." Greg says, "Okay, I'll definitely try sticking to more of a schedule. Thanks for the advice." Susan says, "Of course. And let me know if you ever need someone to watch him." Let's look at this vocabulary. Susan says, "He is adorable." Adorable means extremely cute, charming. Repeat. He's adorable. Greg mentions potty training. This refers to teaching a puppy or a child to use the bathroom appropriately. Repeat. Potty training. Notice the phrase, "It's rough for a few weeks." Rough here means difficult or challenging. Repeat. It's rough. Susan says, "Consistency is really key." This means being consistent is the most important factor for success. Repeat. Consistency is key. And finally, Susan offers, "Let me know if you ever need someone to watch him." To watch a pet means to take care of it temporarily. Repeat. Watch him. Wonderful. Let's continue to Dialogue 15, a conversation about car trouble. Dialogue 15. Kevin is talking to a mechanic named Frank about his car. Kevin says, "Hey, so my car's been making this weird noise whenever I brake. Kind of a grinding sound." Frank says, "Okay, let's take a look. How long has it been doing that?" Kevin says, "Maybe about a week now. It's gotten a little worse the last couple days." Frank says, "Yeah, that sounds like your brake pads are probably worn down. Let me pull it into the bay and check for sure." Kevin says, "Okay. How long do you think that'll take?" Frank says, "Shouldn't take too long. Give me like 20 minutes and I'll have an answer for you." Kevin says, Sounds good. I'll just wait here then. Rough guess. How much do you think this is going to cost me? Frank says. If it's just the pads, we're probably looking at somewhere between 2 and 300. But I'll give you the exact number once I take a look. Kevin says, Okay, that's not too bad. Better to fix it now than wait until something worse happens. Frank says, Exactly. Brakes aren't something you want to put off. All right, give me a few minutes. Let's break down this dialogue. Kevin describes a grinding sound. Grinding describes a rough, scraping noise, often a sign of mechanical wear. Repeat, a grinding sound. Frank says, worn down. This means something has deteriorated from use over time. Repeat, worn down. Notice the phrase, pull it into the bay. A bay in this context refers to the section of a mechanic shop where cars are worked on. Repeat, pull it into the bay. Kevin asks for a rough guess. This means an approximate estimate, not an exact number. Repeat, a rough guess. And Frank says, brakes aren't something you want to put off. To put something off means to delay or postpone it. Repeat, don't put it off. Great work. Let's move to Dialogue 16. A conversation between two friends planning a trip. Dialogue 16. Olivia and Marcus are planning a weekend getaway together. Olivia says, Okay, so I was looking at flights. And it's actually way cheaper to fly out Thursday night instead of Friday morning. Marcus says, Oh, really? How much cheaper are we talking? Olivia says, like almost $100 cheaper per ticket. So definitely worth it if we can both get off work early. Marcus says, Yeah, I think I can swing that. Let me just double check with my manager. Olivia says, Okay, perfect. And I found this really cute little bed and breakfast. It's got amazing reviews. Marcus says, Send me the link. I want to see. Is it close to the beach? Olivia says, Walking distance, like 5 minutes tops. Marcus says, Okay, that sounds perfect. What about renting a car? Or do you think we'll be fine without one? Olivia says, Honestly, I think we could probably get away with just walking and maybe using a rideshare app if we need to go further out. Marcus says, That works for me. Saves us some money too. Okay, I'm getting really excited about this trip now. Olivia says, Me too. It's gonna be so nice to just relax for a few days. Let's go over the language here, Olivia says. It's actually way cheaper. Way here is used as an intensifier, meaning much or a lot. Repeat, way cheaper. Marcus responds, I think I can swing that. To swing something means to manage or arrange it, often despite some difficulty. Repeat, I can swing that. Notice the phrase walking distance. This describes something close enough to walk to, rather than needing transportation. Repeat, walking distance. Olivia says they could get away with just walking. To get away with something means to do something and avoid a negative consequence. Or, in this case, manage successfully without extra hassle. Repeat, get away with it. And finally, Marcus says, That works for me. A simple, common phrase used to agree to a plan. Repeat, that works for me. Fantastic. 2 more dialogues to go. Let's continue to Dialogue 17, a conversation about technology problems. Dialogue 17. Amy is asking her coworker, Josh, for help with her laptop. Amy says, Hey Josh, do you know anything about computers? Mine's been acting up all morning. Josh says, I know a little bit. What's going on with it? Amy says, It just keeps freezing randomly. And then it takes forever to unfreeze. Josh says, that's usually a sign it's overloaded. Do you have like 1,000,000 tabs open or something? Amy says. Actually, yeah. Probably like 20 tabs right now, plus a few programs running in the background. Josh says, yeah, that'll definitely do it. Try closing some of those and see if it helps. Amy says, okay, let me try that. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's already running way smoother. Josh says, nice. Glad that fixed it. If it keeps happening, though, it might be worth restarting it every once in a while. That usually clears things up, too. Amy says, good idea. I honestly never restart this thing. I probably should. Josh says, yeah, most people don't, but it makes a bigger difference than you'd think. Amy says, thanks so much for the help. You saved me today. Let's break this down. Amy says, it's been acting up. To act up means a device is malfunctioning or behaving unusually. Repeat. It's acting up. Josh asks if she has 1,000,000 tabs open. 1,000,000 here is an exaggeration, meaning a very large number. Repeat. 1,000,000 tabs. Notice the phrase running in the background. This describes programs operating on a computer without being actively used. Repeat. Running in the background. Amy says it's running way smoother. Smoother here describes something operating without problems or delays. Repeat. Running smoother. And finally, Amy says, you saved me today. This expressive phrase means someone helped her avoid a difficult situation. Repeat. You saved me today. Amazing work. One last dialogue to go. Dialogue 18. A conversation about a birthday surprise. Dialogue 18. Rebecca and Tyler are planning a surprise birthday party for their friend. Rebecca says, okay, so I think we should tell everyone to arrive by 7. That gives us an hour before she gets there. Tyler says, good call, and I already ordered the cake. It's getting picked up Saturday morning. Rebecca says, perfect. Did you end up going with the chocolate one? Tyler says, yeah, I figured that's her favorite. So it seemed like a safe bet. Rebecca says, definitely the right call. Okay, what about decorations? Do we need to grab anything else? Tyler says, I think we're mostly set. I just need to pick up some balloons on the way over. Rebecca says, awesome. And remember, we need someone to keep her busy until 7, so she doesn't show up early and ruin the surprise. Tyler says, already got that covered. Her sister's going to take her out for a late lunch and stall a little. Rebecca says, perfect. This is coming together so nicely. I think she's going to be really surprised. Tyler says, I hope so. She deserves it. It's been a rough year for her. Let's look at this final set of vocabulary. Rebecca says, that gives us an hour. This simply refers to having a certain amount of time available before something happens. Repeat. That gives us an hour. Tyler says, it seemed like a safe bet. A safe bet means a choice that is very likely to be correct or successful. Repeat. A safe bet. Notice the phrase we're mostly set. Set here means prepared or ready. Repeat. We're mostly set. Rebecca says someone needs to stall her. To stall means to delay someone, usually to buy extra time. Repeat. Stall her. And finally, Tyler says, this is coming together so nicely. This phrase describes a plan or project developing successfully. Repeat. Coming together nicely. Incredible work. You just finished 18 full dialogues today. That is a huge amount of natural, real-world English. Let's keep the practice going because I've got 7 more dialogues for you today. So we're really going to give your listening skills a workout. Dialogue 19 is a conversation between a landlord and a tenant about a broken heater. Dialogue 19, Karen is calling her landlord, Mr. Patterson, because her heater stopped working. Karen says, "Hi, Mr. Patterson. Sorry to bother you on a weekend, but my heater completely stopped working last night." Mr. Patterson says, "Oh no, that's definitely not something we want to leave for long, especially with it getting colder out. Did it just stop, suddenly? Or was it acting weird before that?" Karen says, "It was making a clicking noise for a couple days, and then last night it just shut off completely and wouldn't turn back on." Mr. Patterson says, "Okay, that clicking sound is usually the igniter, so it might just need a small part replaced. I'll send someone over first thing tomorrow morning. Does 9 o'clock work for you?" Karen says, "Yeah, 9 works great. I'll be home. In the meantime, is there anything I should do to stay warm tonight?" Mr. Patterson says, "I'd say layer up. Maybe use some extra blankets. And if you've got a space heater, that could help too. Just don't leave it running unattended." Karen says, "Okay, I actually think I have one in the closet somewhere. I'll dig it out." Mr. Patterson says, "Perfect. And I really appreciate you letting me know right away. The sooner we catch these things, the easier they are to fix." Karen says, "Of course. Thank you so much for taking care of it so quickly. Let's break this dialogue down." Karen says, "Sorry to bother you. This softens the request and shows politeness when reaching out about an inconvenient issue." Repeat. "Sorry to bother you." Mr. Patterson asks if it was acting weird before. Acting weird here describes something behaving unusually, similar to acting up from earlier. Repeat. Acting weird. Notice the phrase, "first thing tomorrow morning." This means as early as possible the next day. Repeat. First thing tomorrow morning. Mr. Patterson suggests to layer up. This means to wear multiple layers of clothing for warmth. Repeat. Layer up. And finally, Karen says she'll dig it out. To dig something out means to search for and retrieve an item that's been stored away, often in a messy or hard-to-reach place. Repeat. Dig it out. Great work. Let's move to Dialogue 20, conversation about a job interview. Dialogue 20. Natalie is talking to her friend Andre about how her job interview went. Andre says, "Hey, how'd the interview go?" "I've been wondering all day." Natalie says, "Honestly, I think it went really well. Way better than I expected." Andre says, "Oh, nice. Tell me everything. What kind of questions did they ask?" Natalie says, "Mostly pretty standard stuff at first. Like, why do you want this position? What are your strengths?" But then it got a little more specific about my past experience. Andre says, "Did they throw any curveballs at you?" Natalie says, "Actually, yeah. They asked me to walk them through a time I dealt with a difficult coworker, which caught me off guard a little." Andre says, "How'd you handle it?" Natalie says, "I think I did okay. I just gave them a real example and tried to stay calm about it." Andre says, "That's exactly what they want to hear. Honestly. So what's next? Did they say when you'll hear back?" Natalie says, "They said within the week. So now it's just the waiting game." Andre says, "Well, I've got a really good feeling about this one. Keep me posted. Natalie says, I will. Thanks for checking in. It means a lot. Let's look at the vocabulary here. Andre asks, how'd the interview go? This is the standard casual way to ask about the outcome of an interview. Repeat. How'd it go? Andre asks if they threw any curveballs. A curveball is an unexpected or tricky question or situation. Repeat. Any curveballs? Natalie says it caught her off guard. To catch someone off guard means to surprise them when they're unprepared. Repeat. It caught me off guard. Notice the phrase, the waiting game. This describes the period of uncertainty while waiting for news or results. Repeat. The waiting game. And finally, Andre says, keep me posted. This common phrase means to keep someone updated with new information. Repeat. Keep me posted. Excellent. Let's continue to Dialogue 21. A conversation between two roommates about chores. Dialogue 21. Ashley and Brianna are roommates talking about splitting up household chores. Ashley says, Hey, I feel like the dishes have been piling up a lot lately. Should we come up with some kind of schedule? Brianna says, Yeah, honestly, that's probably a good idea. It feels like it's always just whoever gets to it first. Ashley says, Exactly. So maybe we alternate weeks. Like I do dishes one week, you do them the next? Brianna says, That works for me. And we could do the same thing with taking out the trash and cleaning the bathroom. Ashley says, Perfect. That seems fair. And honestly, it'll probably keep the apartment looking a lot better overall. Brianna says, Agreed. I don't love doing chores, but I really don't love living in a mess either. Ashley says, Ha, same here. Okay, should we write it down somewhere so we actually stick to it? Brianna says, Yeah, let's put a little chart on the fridge. That way there's no confusion about whose turn it is. Ashley says, Good idea. I'll make one tonight. Brianna says, Awesome. Thanks for bringing this up. Honestly, I think it'll make things a lot smoother around here. Let's break down this dialogue. Ashley says, The dishes have been piling up. To pile up means to accumulate, usually referring to a growing, unwanted amount of something. Repeat. Piling up. Brianna says, Whoever gets to it first. This phrase describes a situation with no clear system, where tasks just get done randomly. Repeat. Whoever gets to it first. Notice the phrase, to alternate weeks. To alternate means to take turns, switching back and forth regularly. Repeat. Alternate weeks. Ashley says, That seems fair. Fair here means reasonable and equally balanced. Repeat. That seems fair. And finally, Brianna says, It'll make things a lot smoother. Smoother here refers to something happening with less friction or conflict. Repeat. A lot smoother. Great job. Let's move to Dialogue 22. A conversation about a gym membership. Dialogue 22. Jason is asking a gym employee, Melissa, about membership options. Jason says, Hi, I'm interested in signing up, but I wanted to ask about your membership plans first. Melissa says, Of course. So we've got a few different options. We've got month to month, or you can save some money by committing to a full year. Jason says, Okay. And is there a difference in price between the two? Melissa says, Yeah. Month to month is a little more expensive per month, but it gives you more flexibility if you're not sure yet. Jason says, "That makes sense. I think I might just start month to month and see how it goes." Melissa says, "Totally understandable. A lot of people do that at first. Do you want a tour of the facility before you decide?" Jason says, "Yeah, that would be great. I'd love to see the equipment and the locker rooms." Melissa says, "Perfect. Right this way. We've also got a few classes included in every membership. If you're interested in group workouts," Jason says. "Oh, nice. I didn't realize that was included. That's a nice bonus." Melissa says, "Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that at first, but it ends up being one of the most popular perks. Let's look at the vocabulary here." Melissa says, "You can save some money by committing to a full year. To commit to something means to agree to follow through with it over time." Repeat. Commit to a full year. Jason says, "That makes sense. This is a very common phrase used to show understanding or agreement with an explanation." Repeat. That makes sense. Notice the phrase, "see how it goes." This means to try something without fully committing and evaluate the results over time. Repeat. See how it goes. Melissa mentions a nice bonus. A bonus is an unexpected extra benefit. Repeat. A nice bonus. And finally, she says, one of the most popular perks. A perk is a benefit or advantage that comes with something, often a job or membership. Repeat. A popular perk. Fantastic. Let's continue to Dialogue 23. A conversation about a lost package. Dialogue 23. Diego is calling customer service, speaking with a representative named Grace about a missing package. Diego says, "Hi, I'm calling because my package was supposed to arrive 3 days ago, but it still hasn't shown up." Grace says, "I'm really sorry to hear that. Let me pull up your order and take a look. Can I get your order number?" Diego says, "Yeah, 1 second. Let me find it. Okay, it's 44721. Grace says, "Perfect. Thank you. Okay, I'm seeing here that it says delivered, but I understand that's not the case on your end?" Diego says, "Right. I checked with my neighbors, too, and nobody's seen it. It's like it just vanished." Grace says, "That's frustrating. I'm sorry about that. What I can do is file a claim on our end, and we'll either get you a replacement or a full refund, whichever you'd prefer." Diego says, "A replacement would be great. Honestly, I do still need the item." Grace says, "Perfect. I'll get that started right now, and you should see a new tracking number within 24 hours. Diego says, "Thank you so much. I really appreciate you sorting this out so quickly." Grace says, "Of course. And again, I'm really sorry for the trouble. Hopefully this one arrives without any issues. Let's break this down," Diego says. "It still hasn't shown up. To show up means to arrive, and it's very commonly used for both people and packages." Repeat. "It hasn't shown up." Grace says, "Let me pull up your order." To pull something up means to bring information onto a screen to view it. Repeat. "Let me pull that up." Notice the phrase, "It just vanished." Vanished means disappeared completely, often used dramatically. Repeat. "It vanished." Grace says, "I'll file a claim." To file a claim means to formally submit a request, often related to insurance or a company issue. Repeat. File a claim. And finally, Diego says, "Sorting this out." To sort something out means to resolve or fix a problem. Repeat. Sorting this out. Wonderful. 2 more dialogues left. Let's continue to dialogue 24. A conversation about starting a new hobby. Dialogue 24. Hannah is telling her friend Liam about a pottery class she just started. Liam says, "Hey, didn't you say you started a new class recently? How's that going?" Hannah says, "Oh my gosh. Yes, I started pottery a couple weeks ago, and I'm honestly obsessed with it." Liam says, "No way. That's so cool. I've always wanted to try that. Is it hard to pick up?" Hannah says, "It's definitely harder than it looks. My first few pieces came out pretty lopsided, but I'm getting the hang of it now." Liam says, "Ha, that's how it goes with anything new." "Do you go every week?" Hannah says. "Yeah, every Tuesday night. It's honestly become like my favorite part of the week. It's so relaxing." Liam says, "That's awesome. I feel like I need a hobby like that, something totally unrelated to work." Hannah says, "You should come with me sometime. They actually do drop-in classes for beginners." Liam says, "Yeah, I'd actually really like that. Let me know the next time you're going." Hannah says, "I will. I think you'd really enjoy it. It's such a nice way to unwind." Let's go over this vocabulary. Hannah says, "I'm honestly obsessed with it." Obsessed here is used casually to mean extremely enthusiastic about something. Repeat, obsessed with it. This kind of enthusiastic, casual phrasing is something you'll hear constantly among friends talking about hobbies, movies, food, pretty much anything they genuinely enjoy. So it's a great one to add to your own everyday vocabulary. Liam asks, "Is it hard to pick up?" To pick something up means to learn a new skill. Repeat, hard to pick up. Notice the phrase, getting the hang of it. This common expression means becoming more comfortable and skilled at something through practice. Repeat, getting the hang of it. Hannah says pottery is her favorite part of the week. This simple structure is a great way to express enjoyment of a regular activity. Repeat, my favorite part of the week. And finally, she says it's a nice way to unwind. To unwind means to relax after being stressed or busy. Repeat, a way to unwind. Amazing! One final dialogue for today. Dialogue 25. A conversation about moving to a new city. Dialogue 25. Ethan is talking to his old friend Priya about his upcoming move to a new city. Priya says, "So I heard you're finally making the move. When does that happen?" Ethan says, "Yeah, it's official. We're heading out at the end of next month." Priya says, "That's so exciting. Are you nervous at all? Or mostly just excited?" Ethan says, "Honestly, a mix of both. Excited for the new opportunity, but nervous about leaving everyone behind here." Priya says, "That makes total sense. It's a big change." "Do you know anyone out there already?" Ethan says, "Just one friend from college. But he's been really helpful showing me around the area online." Priya says, "That's good. At least you'll have one familiar face." "Have you found a place to live yet?" Ethan says, "Yeah. We actually just signed a lease last week. It's a little smaller than our place now, but it's in a great location." Priya says, "That's all that really matters. Honestly. Location makes such a huge difference." "Well, I'm really happy for you, even though I'm gonna miss having you around." Ethan says, "Same here. But hey, it's not goodbye forever. You'll definitely have to come visit." Priya says, "You can count on that." Let's break down our final dialogue of the day. Priya asks. When does that happen? A simple, direct way to ask about timing. Repeat. When does that happen? Ethan says. It's official. Official here means confirmed and certain. No longer just a plan. Repeat. It's official. Notice the phrase, a mix of both. This is used when someone feels two different emotions at the same time. Repeat. A mix of both. You'll hear native speakers use this whenever their feelings aren't purely one thing or the other. Whether it's excitement and nervousness, happiness and sadness, or relief and exhaustion. It's a really flexible little phrase, Priya says. That makes total sense. A stronger version of that makes sense. Adding emphasis. Repeat. That makes total sense. And finally, Priya says, you can count on that. This phrase is a strong, confident way to promise or guarantee something. Repeat. You can count on that. Let's squeeze in a few more before we finish, because I want to make sure you're really getting a full workout today. Dialogue 26 is a conversation about a library card. Dialogue 26. Grace is asking a librarian, Mr. Oliver, about signing up for a library card. Grace says, Hi, I just moved to the area, and I wanted to ask about getting a library card. Mr. Oliver says, Of course. Welcome to the neighborhood. It's a pretty simple process. Do you have some kind of ID with your current address on it? Grace says, Yeah, I've got my driver's license. Does that work? Mr. Oliver says, Perfect. That's exactly what we need. I'll just get you to fill out this quick form, and then we'll get your card printed right away. Grace says, Great. And is there a limit on how many books I can check out at once? Mr. Oliver says, You can check out up to 10 items at a time, and they're due back in 3 weeks. But you can always renew online if you need more time. Grace says, That's really generous. Honestly, I wasn't expecting that many. Mr. Oliver says, Yeah, we try to make it easy for people to read as much as they want. Do you have any favorite genres? I can point you toward a good section to start. Grace says, I really love mystery novels. If you have any recommendations. Mr. Oliver says, Oh, we've got a fantastic mystery section. Right this way. I'll show you a few of my personal favorites. Let's break this dialogue down. Grace says, I just moved to the area. This common phrase describes someone new to a neighborhood or city. Repeat. I just moved to the area. Mr. Oliver says, That's exactly what we need. This phrase confirms something is precisely correct or sufficient. Repeat. Exactly what we need. Notice the phrase, check out, referring to borrowing items from a library. Repeat. Check out. Mr. Oliver says, That's really generous. Generous here describes something given in a larger or more favorable amount than expected. Repeat. Really generous. And finally, Mr. Oliver offers his personal favorites. This phrase describes items someone particularly likes or recommends based on their own taste. Repeat. My personal favorites. Great job. Let's move to Dialogue 27. A conversation about a broken phone screen. Dialogue 27. Ben is talking to a phone repair technician named Sophia about his cracked screen. Ben says, Hi. So I dropped my phone this morning, and the screen's completely cracked. Can you guys fix that here? Sophia says, Yeah, definitely. Screen repairs are actually one of the most common things we do. Let me take a look real quick. Ben says, Sure. Here you go. Sophia says, Okay, yeah, this is a pretty standard crack. Nothing too severe. We should be able to replace the screen within about an hour. Ben says, Oh, that's way faster than I expected. Honestly, I thought I'd have to leave it overnight. Sophia says, Nope. We keep most screens in stock for common phone models, so it's usually a same-day fix. Ben says, That's great news. Roughly, how much is that going to run me? Sophia says, For your model, it's around $120, parts and labor included. Ben says, Okay, that's honestly not bad at all, considering how bad the crack looks. Sophia says, Yeah, it looks worse than it actually is in terms of the fix. I'll get started on it now, and I'll give you a call the second it's ready. Ben says, Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the quick turnaround. Let's look at the vocabulary here. Ben says, The screen's completely cracked. Completely here is used as an intensifier, meaning entirely or fully. Repeat, completely cracked. Sophia says, Nothing too severe. Severe describes something serious or extreme. And here it means the damage isn't that bad. Repeat, nothing too severe. Notice the phrase, a same-day fix. This describes a repair completed within the same day it was brought in. Repeat, a same-day fix. Ben asks, How much is that going to run me? To run someone a certain amount is a casual way of asking about cost. Repeat, How much is that going to run me? And finally, Ben thanks her for the quick turnaround. Turnaround refers to the time it takes to complete and return something. Repeat, quick turnaround. Fantastic. One more dialogue to finish up today. Dialogue 28. A conversation about volunteering. Dialogue 28. Maria is talking to her co-worker, David, about a volunteer event happening this weekend. Maria says, Hey, are you still planning on coming to the volunteer thing on Saturday? We could really use the extra hands. David says, Yeah, I'm definitely still in. What time does it start again? Maria says, 9 in the morning, and it usually wraps up by early afternoon, around 1 or 2. David says, Okay, that works for me. What exactly are we going to be doing? Maria says, Mostly cleaning up the park by the river, picking up trash, maybe doing a little bit of planting too. David says, Oh, nice. I actually really enjoy that kind of work. It feels good to be outside doing something productive. Maria says, Same. Honestly, it's one of my favorite events we do every year. Plus, they usually provide lunch afterward. David says, Okay, now I'm even more motivated to show up. Should I bring anything specific? Gloves or anything? Maria says, Yeah, definitely bring gloves if you have them. And maybe wear clothes you don't mind getting a little dirty. David says, Got it. I'll come prepared. Thanks for reminding me. I probably would have forgotten otherwise. Let's break down this final dialogue. Maria says, We could really use the extra hands. This phrase means additional help would be very valuable. Repeat. We could really use the extra hands. David says, I'm definitely still in. To be in means to agree to participate in something planned. Repeat. I'm still in. Notice the phrase wraps up. This means an event or activity comes to an end. Repeat. It wraps up. David says it feels good to be productive. Productive describes accomplishing useful work or tasks. Repeat. Feels productive. And finally, David says, I'll come prepared. This phrase means arriving with everything needed in advance. Repeat. Come prepared. All right, I've got two final dialogues before we truly wrap things up, so let's finish strong. Dialogue 29 is a conversation about a noisy neighbor. Dialogue 29. Sam is talking to his neighbor, Patricia, about some late-night noise. Sam says, "Hey, Patricia, sorry to bring this up, but do you know anything about the loud music last night? It went pretty late." Patricia says, "Oh, gosh. Yeah, I actually heard it too. I think it was coming from the apartment upstairs. Not mine." Sam says, "Oh, okay. Good. I honestly wasn't sure where it was coming from. The walls make it hard to tell." Patricia says, "Yeah, same here. It was pretty distracting. I almost went up there myself around midnight." Sam says, "I probably should have just knocked on their door instead of losing sleep over it." Patricia says, "Ha, yeah. Next time, that's probably the move. Most people don't even realize how loud they're being." Sam says, "True. I'll definitely say something if it happens again." Patricia says, "Good plan. And hey, let me know if it keeps happening. We could always mention it to the building manager together." Sam says, "That's a good idea. Thanks for talking this through with me." Patricia says, "Anytime. That's what neighbors are for." Let's break down this dialogue. Sam says, "Sorry to bring this up. This softens a slightly awkward or sensitive topic before introducing it." Repeat. "Sorry to bring this up." Patricia says, "That's probably the move." Move here is casual slang meaning the correct or smart action to take. Repeat. "That's the move." Notice the phrase losing sleep over it. This idiom means worrying about something so much it affects your rest. Repeat. Losing sleep over it. Patricia suggests mentioning it to the building manager. A building manager oversees the maintenance and rules of an apartment complex. Repeat. The building manager. And finally, Patricia says, "That's what neighbors are for." A warm phrase similar to "that's what friends are for," showing goodwill between neighbors. Repeat. That's what neighbors are for. Wonderful. Our very last dialogue of the day. Dialogue 30. A conversation about trying a new restaurant. Dialogue 30. Claire and Devon are deciding where to eat dinner tonight. Claire says, "Okay, so where do you want to eat tonight?" "I'm honestly open to anything." Devon says, "Same here. Actually, have you been to that new Thai place on 5th Street yet?" Claire says, "No, but I've heard really good things. I think my coworker mentioned it just last week." Devon says, "Yeah. Apparently, the pad Thai is incredible. And it's not too expensive either." Claire says, "Okay, that settles it then. Let's go there. Should we make a reservation? Or just walk in?" Devon says, "It's a Tuesday, so I don't think we'll need one, but I can call just in case." Claire says, "Good idea. Better safe than sorry." "What time were you thinking?" Devon says, "Maybe around 7? That gives us enough time to grab a drink first if we want." Claire says, "Perfect. That works for me. I'll meet you there." Devon says, "Sounds good. I'm actually getting hungry just thinking about it." Let's break down our final dialogue of the entire episode. Claire says, "I'm honestly open to anything." This phrase means having no strong preference. Being flexible. Repeat. Open to anything. Devon says, "That settles it then." This phrase means a decision has officially been made. Repeat. That settles it. This is a great phrase for wrapping up a small decision in casual conversation. Whether you're picking a restaurant, choosing a movie, or agreeing on weekend plans with a friend, notice the phrase, better safe than sorry. A very common expression meaning it's wiser to take a precaution than risk a problem later. Repeat. Better safe than sorry. Claire asks, "What time were you thinking?" A natural, casual way to ask someone's preferred timing. Repeat. "What time were you thinking?" And finally, Devin says, "I'm getting hungry just thinking about it." This expressive phrase shows excitement or anticipation, triggered simply by imagining something. Repeat. Just thinking about it. And that wraps up all 30 dialogues for today. Wow. We covered a lot of ground, from coffee shops to doctors' offices to airports to phone calls with old friends. I hope hearing these natural conversations between two native speakers gave you a real sense of how English actually sounds in everyday situations. Not textbook English, but real, living, breathing English. The kind you'll actually hear if you travel to an English-speaking country, or talk to native speakers online, or watch English shows and movies. Remember, the goal isn't to understand every single word perfectly on the first listen. The goal is to get comfortable with the rhythm, the natural pauses, the casual expressions, and the way ideas connect together in real conversation. I'd really encourage you to come back to this episode and listen again, maybe even a few times. Each time you listen, you'll catch a little more, and those phrases we practice together will start to feel more and more natural. Try using some of these expressions yourself, in your own conversations, in your journal, or even just talking to yourself in English during the day. The more you use them, the faster they'll become a real part of your vocabulary. Before we wrap up, let's do a quick review of just a few of my favorite phrases from today. Repeat. No worries at all. Repeat. You can't miss it. Repeat. So much for my plans. Repeat. It's cutting it close. Repeat. I owe you one. Repeat. Coming right up. Repeat. Consistency is key. Repeat. Don't put it off. Repeat. That works for me. Repeat. A safe bet. Repeat. Layer up. Repeat. Any curveballs? Repeat. Piling up. Repeat. Getting the hang of it. Repeat. You can count on that. Repeat. Exactly what we need. Repeat. A same-day fix. Repeat. Come prepared. Repeat. That's the move. Repeat. Better safe than sorry. These phrases might seem small on their own, but when you start combining them naturally in your own conversations, they make a massive difference in how fluent and confident you sound. Native speakers use these little chunks of language constantly, almost without thinking, and the more of them you collect, the more natural your own English is going to feel, both when you're speaking and when you're listening to others. And here's something worth remembering. None of these 30 dialogues required advanced vocabulary or complicated grammar. Every single one of them was built from simple, everyday words used in smart, natural combinations. That's really the secret to sounding fluent. It's not about knowing rare, complicated words. It's about knowing how to use simple words the way native speakers actually use them, in the right context, with the right rhythm, at the right moment in a conversation. So the next time you're listening to a podcast, watching a show, or talking to someone in English, try to notice these little phrases in the wild. And when you catch yourself using one naturally, without even thinking about it, that's when you'll know It's really become part of you. So don't be afraid to go back through this episode a second or even a third time. Pause after each dialogue. Repeat the phrases out loud again, and really let them sink in. Language learning isn't about perfection on the first try. It's about repetition, patience, and consistent practice over time. Great job. Seriously, you should be proud of the work you put in today. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, learning and growing your English together. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you shared it with a friend who's also learning English, or left a quick review. It really helps the show reach more learners like you. And one last thing before I let you go. If there was a particular dialogue today that felt especially useful to you, maybe the one about the job interview, or the one about car trouble, or the one about ordering at the restaurant, go back and listen to just that section again on its own, out loud, a couple of times, focused. Repeated listening on a smaller chunk is honestly one of the fastest ways to internalize new expressions, sometimes even faster than listening to a full episode straight through just once. And if you ever want to challenge yourself even further, try covering the vocabulary breakdown and just listening to the raw dialogue first. See how much you catch on your own before I explain it. Then go back and check yourself against my explanation. That kind of active listening builds real confidence over time. And confidence is honestly half the battle when it comes to speaking a new language. This has been Alex with English in Fluency. Keep practicing, keep listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care, and talk soon.